The public can access this meeting via WebEx technology. The meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and participation is being provided as a courtesy, the meeting will not be suspended if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on the agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. The meeting number tonight is 2345-395-9088. Password is Burlington with a capital B. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes from October 21st. I don't have it on here.
So moved.
Anyone want to second that?
I'll second
Oh,
it.
Roger, okay.
No.
I don't know.
I'll second it.
Okay, Catherine. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, I just want to verify who's, if anyone else joined. Okay. All right. I assume that's Orfano. I don't have anybody on. All right, so Mrs. Bond.
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco.
Aye.
Ms. Simon.
Yes.
Mr. Brooks. Dr. Conti.
Yes.
Ms. Kasha.
Yes.
Mr. Cuna.
Yes.
Mr. Villano. Mr. Villano.
Yes.
Ms. Priest.
Aye.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
And I am an aye. If you were a voting member and I didn't call you, let me know. I think I got everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11-0-0. All right. Do we have previous public comment responses?
Yes,
Okay.
we do have one from our last meeting. The comment that was made is, what is the procedure for selecting the CMs? So we're going to talk more about the design bid build versus construction manager at risk construction method of delivery later on in the presentation. But just to make sure we address this comment now, for selecting specifically a construction manager, we follow a Massachusetts procurement process. We submit the construction manager application to the Office of the Inspector General. They review it, and that can take 6 to 8 weeks to receive approval to proceed with construction manager at risk delivery method. We would then solicit statements of qualifications, and then we would go through a pre-qualification process with a construction manager selection subcommittee, and that has to include a representative from the OPM, the designer, and from the SBC. Once shortlisted, we solicit for requests for proposals, and then we would then move to interview the construction managers. Following the interview, we would then select/recommend proceeding with the preferred construction manager. So I just wanted to outline that process when it relates to specifically the question for selecting construction managers.
Jen, I don't have audio on the virtual from town meeting, from town hall. Can come out.
It's someone at BCAT, I think. The select board tonight. Busy night at BCAT. Thank you. All right. Any public comments in the room? Go ahead.
This is a 3-story.
Okay. Sure. All right. Hi, Dave Vadilla, Town Meeting, Precinct 1, also a Fox Hill resident. First, I'd like to thank everybody for maintaining the 4 elementary school model. I think it was the right decision. I know it was kind of contentious there, but I think at the end, I think it's going to be better for the town, and thank you. But I'm back with a little more community input on the building and the location. There's really no desire for a 3-story building in the general community or around the Fox Hill area. We don't think it fits with the sort of the character of the area, right? Putting 3 stories there is going to be a pretty large building. There's also a desire for the building to be located a little bit more to the southeast side of the property, not directly up front by the road, but a little further back. I think you've got that drawn out as options 3 in your presentations. So that is what I wanted to convey. Thank you very much for your time. Won't take the full 15 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Do I have anybody online? All right.
Okay, next we have invoices for approval this evening. So we have our Dorn Whittier monthly invoice number 13 in the amount of $20,792.50. Danisco's invoice number 9888 for basic services in the amount of $29,545. Danisco's invoice number 9889 for traffic in the amount of $1,797.40. And then the last invoice, Danisco invoice number 9890 for wetland/ANRAD in the amount of $2,787.57.
Second.
Any comments? All right, Mrs. Bond,
Yes.
Mrs. Monaco,
Yes.
Ms. Simon,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
Dr. Conti? Yes. Ms. Kasha?
Yes.
Mr. Cuna?
Yes.
Mr. Villano? Mrs. Priest?
Aye.
Mr. Lyons? Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And I am yes, 1100.
Great. And then next we just have our budget status update. Mike Cox, I think you are on remote if you want to give the update for this.
Good evening. No change to the budget as we shared last month, other than the invoices that we just approved. So again, I was just wanting you to point at the latter columns on the contract remaining balance, which we have 640,000, and the budget balance, which is what's uncommitted to the to contracts of 291,000 remaining. Any questions? Thank you.
Next is Danisco's design update, and I'm going to go to Donna's slides.
Good evening, everyone. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. We are really actually excited to be here. I hope some people have had an opportunity to look through the presentation. We have started to define the building.
And the shape of the building, and we appreciate everyone's comments to date, both in epoxy or to rectangular, and we're looking to create a fun, small, intimate feel to the building and how it fits on the site. So I know we have a few discussion points tonight. One is a 2-story versus 3-story, and then the other conversation is whether it's in the north part of the site or the southeast part of the site. So I think what we'll do is first just talk about the differences in the floor plans, maybe pause if people have questions, and then you'll see as we go through the options how the shape changes a little bit based upon the location of the building. So I first would like to thank Dr. Conti, his team, David, John, and a lot of staff that have participated over the past month as we talked about the organization of the spaces, ensuring that the special education programs were integrated, that the right adjacencies were met as we started talking about priorities as what was on the first floor, the second floor, and then possibly the third floor. So And again, these diagrams will change a little bit as we start looking at the options, but in principle, the three-story building, as you can see here, is about 45,000 square feet. All of them are going to be 91,000 gross square feet. The building length is approximately 370 feet, but the corridor length is slightly shorter. This option allows us to have the community wing. The community wing, as you enter the building, will be directly in front and to the left of you. So we're able to close off the academic wing, and the community wing can be used for after-hour use. Right directly in front of you is a cafeteria, which we envision to be glass and light, bright, with a great view and connections to the outdoors as you look through the space. We have a cafetorium, right? So the blue, dark blue is the stage, and then we've had a lot of conversation about having the music classroom that abuts the stage. So that gives you flexibility for music programs, access to the stage, and just flexibility with a couple of practice rooms in the same vicinity. As you look at the purple spaces, we have designed the building, so it's a cluster of 4 classroom-sized spaces for each grade. So some of them have special education programs that are currently identified, and then there are other support programs that are also full-size classrooms. So that allows complete future flexibility for this to be organized as a 4 classroom per grade model. In a 3-story school, it would be kindergarten, 1st grade, and then on the 2nd floor would be presumably 2nd, 3rd, and on the 3rd floor would be 4th and 5th grade. And you'll see the darkish purple are all of the special education programs and support spaces. So they are very integrated with the academic wings. There's an elevator that's centrally located. It is right by the cafeteria. Yep, there you go. Thank you. So there's, and we will have 3 stairs that as you enter the building, there'll be a stair, not 100% finalized, but a stair right in front of you. There'll be a stair at the node where the academic wing, where you enter the academic wing, and then one at the end of the academic wing. And then as you go up to the 2nd floor, we have a library or media center, which will be above the main entry and administration spaces. We see this jetting out a little bit. It will be a beautiful light-filled space that will really give some significance and purpose to the media center as you arrive. Next to that is our art classroom, along with our science tech engineering is upstairs in the 3-story. So we see that as a nice gallery area, project area, gathering for project-based learning, for art and library to be able to share and display student art. And then you'll see the classroom wing or academic spaces, again, 4 classrooms per grade. And then when you go up to the 3rd floor, it really is primarily academic spaces. The science tech engineering classroom is up on the 3rd floor as it supports grades 3, 4, and 5. We have the counseling suite, whether it's guidance, adjustment counselors, psychologists.
The counseling suite is centrally located on the 2nd floor, so they have easy access to all 3 floors. So when we look at the 2nd floor plan, yes, please. So the 2-story option is very similarly laid out. The difference is that there are 3 grades per floor. So on the 1st floor, you'll enter, the cafeteria would be in front of you. The gymnasium is slightly to the left or west of that, we have the cafeteria with the stage attached and the music classroom adjacent to that. And then you would be entering the academic wing, and you'll see again, similarly, the 4 classroom pods per grade. And we would have kindergarten first, second on the first floor, and then third, fourth, fifth on the second floor. When you go up to the second floor, we again have the media center centrally and prominently located with the science, tech, engineering, and the art room. And that's a great opportunity for shared resources and working collaboratively with the 2 spaces. The counseling suite would be on the second floor and have easy access and direct access to the main administration down below. I think that's it. If you want to. Yeah, I'm trying to see them. Thanks. That's okay. So this footprint is slightly larger. It's 43,000 feet, and obviously the gross square footage is the same. The building length is slightly larger at 470 feet with a quarter length, again, slightly larger. And then if the music is on the first floor, the media is on the second, along with the art and the STE. And the organization of the classrooms is exactly the same. 4 classroom pods with special education programs or other support spaces to allow you future flexibility as programs change. So maybe we'll pause here, and if anyone has any questions regarding the organization of the plans as it relates to 2 or 3 story.
So I know we've talked a little bit about like where, if we needed to put an addition on in the future, where would that go on the, I'll say the 2-story building just for the sake of it. And then I know some people were talking about configuration, and if we did the 2-story, trying to make it not as long, is there any other way to lay things out to, place things so that it isn't as long? Like
Right.
maybe putting the gym putting the gym right behind the cafeteria, or doing something like just to rearrange things. But more importantly, just first question and then the other.
Thank you. So Christina, if you could just jump to some of the site plans. We have identified locations and all of the options. If you could zoom in, Christina, you'll see that this is a 3-story option, but you'll see the dotted dash line at the end. Right, so depending on the final layout, final configuration, 2 classrooms at the end could be expanded. Do you see that, the dotted line? You could have 2 classrooms, so in a 3-story school, you could get 6 additional classrooms, 2-story school, 2 additional classrooms. And this is, where we currently are today, but once we have a final location, we can massage it and work on it to see if we can even expand it further given the configuration of the location in the wetlands and constraints. As for how can you make this not so long elongated, I think was your question. Christine, if you want to scroll down a couple of slides, please. Keep going. So this is traffic organization. Nope, keep going. It will be one more. One more. So yeah, that's okay. But just if you want to zoom out a little bit, just so people can see, we've started to have the building take shape and form and put it into a 3-dimensional rendering, so that you can start seeing and feeling what the size of the buildings may look like. This is a 3-story option. And then if you want to just quickly scroll through the next couple of pages. So this is a 3-story option. Sorry, I keep saying that. 2-story option, slide 3. So if you want to zoom in a little bit, so for the building to the north, right, we were able to kink the building create a node in the center. You can see where the red arrow is, that's the entry. And kind of move the two large, like we're seeing them as two different blocks or elements of the building. So your community wing will have one look, and then you kind of swing around the corner to see the academic wing. And if you go to the massing model, so maybe 3 or 4 slides after that. Is that too far? I think that's too far. You gotta scroll up, sorry. Keep going. Is that too far? No, I'm not saying, it's so hard to not be able to drive. Is this the two, this is the 3-story. All right, so come back down maybe. 29, thank you. I've got my cheat sheet here too. You got it, all right. So as you can see, again, we'll continue to play with it, Catherine, how to break up the long mass, but we've already started to push and pull and make sure that, to break down the scale and keep the components, your academic wing you want to keep together. Then we have the kind of core with the music and the cafeteria and then the gym. And we can get into, each option has similar but different approaches, making sure that we're able to get receiving into the building. We don't want them to have to drive all the way into the site or in and around the building to access it. But this will give you an idea that we're really trying to break down the scale, the massing, and make this a very interesting building as opposed to just a long linear building or approach. And then if we look to the south, just to give you an example of what that might look like, we are slightly limited. This is the 3 stories, so keep going. There you go. So
What slide is that?
this is,
Thank you.
right. So if you want to scoot it over or zoom out just a little bit, yeah. There you go. Yeah, this is the 3 story. So just so you could see this is the
2-story.
2-story. It's a
3.2.
site option 3C 2-story. We have several options of this, and we're thinking how we can locate the service, the gymnasium, the cafeteria, the drives, et cetera. So we'll continue to, depending on what solution people like best, we can continue to try to make the building not feel so long and linear. And, we took this view for all of the options just so that so it was the same view and everyone could see them. But clearly, unless you're flying a plane or have a drone, you would never be seeing the building from this view. But it just gives you an idea of the massing and as it starts to take shape. And here too, if you would go, Christina, up maybe 3, 4 slides maybe, you can see where an addition would go if it was to the southeast.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Keep going.
Up or down?
Up,
Slide 30?
back slides, yeah. I'm trying to drive and view all at the same time. That's a 3-story, so it would be, could be even slide 22.
That's what I'm on
Yeah,
right now.
perfect. So if you zoom in, yep. So we have a couple of options for the southeast. You can see we have the gym to the north and the classroom wing to the south. You could see that we can expand the classroom wing here. We're being mindful. We have some constraints, right? We have the vernal pool, the wetlands, the vernal pool buffer to the east, and then to the north, we have another wetland, and we're trying to be as respectful as possible with a 100-foot setback there. And then you can see the dotted existing building. So we're somewhat squeezed or pinched as we have to locate the building in between these two constraints. But this is one way of looking at it, right? With the gym to the north, the classrooms to the south, and then the next option, I think we flip the gym.
The dotted line right here, and that's for addition.
That's the addition space, and that would be the same. It would be, right now, we've been able to identify 2 classrooms on the second floor and 2 classrooms on the first floor, 2 classrooms on the second floor. Yeah, if you want to just scroll down, maybe, now I've got to look at it. Everyone else is my eyes. I love it. Thank you. We have the gym flipped in another version. So if you go to slide 32. Right, so, yep, that's perfect, that's fine. You'll see that this is again 2-story, and flipping the gym, you can see the building really starts to kink, right? We're able to make it a little more interesting and not feel as long or linear, but this is a traffic slide. But again, with the existing constraints, especially the existing school, we start to become a little bit limited on how the building could be laid out in that location.
Now, if with this version though, can you flip it so that the buses are on the opposite side?
We
and
have
not-
another, we have one of
we have
those
one
too.
Okay, I may not have
That's okay.
noticed that,
Yep.
but
Yep, so if we flip the bus, you're saying put the buses to the north?
yes, well, up here, because I don't think anyone on Vincent's going to want buses idling
Along
in their
there.
backyard at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Agreed.
Yes.
So with that, why don't we just walk through that? So Christine, if you could go to the slide before that. Yeah, I think. And then, so we've come up with different schemes, and I think what we want to show is when we start thinking about the site relationships, all of the site requirements, right? Our goal is to separate the buses from the parent drop-off and pickup. So, and all of the options with the traffic circle, that really seems to work well. What we're calling a bus drop-off loop would support all of the buses that would be coming in, and it would be independent of. And then if you go to the next slide, Christina, please. So this is the bus drop-off. So when we talk about building components, elements, and the relationships, the cafetorium, the gymnasium, support the support spaces needed for that would be, you have the kitchen, so you technically want the receiving area near the cafeteria. So when you start looking at the community wing that has the cafeteria and the gymnasium, that also then would have your service area as close as possible to the kitchen, so that the kitchen could receive all of its supplies, and then the trash and recycling, et cetera. So when you have the gymnasium, the classrooms oriented to the north, right, your bus drop, your receiving area truly wants to be down the south where the cafeteria is for the receiving. So what we've done, Catherine, is we've added, so with the bus drop-off, there would be a receiving area that would be able to come off the bus loop and go straight to the receiving. And that way it keeps them from just coming all the way in and around the building. If we flip the building, so the gymnasium's to the north, then the bus loop would go to the north. And I think we have that option, don't we? It wasn't shown.
We have one that has both the bus on the north
Yeah, yeah.
and the parking.
And so then, what slide is that?
24. 24.
23, yep. Yeah, but that's okay. This is the same, right? So you can see what we did here. There are different ways to configure the parking. We want to be thoughtful. We've started thinking about, okay, how can we do all of this with the existing building that has to remain? And then what makes the most sense from a construction sequencing so that we're able to provide the services and the parking and site amenities to the existing school while being able to complete as much as we can in the first phase. So here, it's very similar. We have actually the parking in the front, the parent drop-off loop in the front with the bus drop-off to the north, and then flipping the building, we're able to have the receiving to the north and then receiving, which would not occur during drop-off and pickup. So they would be able to come through the bus drop-off loop and enter the receiving kind of behind the gym. And we'll continue to study this. Does it make sense to have the receiving on the outside and the gym closer to the cafeteria? Right? There's a lot of studies that will be required as we go forward, but this responds to that.
What's a control point? Is that like a staffed location?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can spend a couple of minutes as we go through these options. So I just want to make sure I'm looking at the same thing you are.
Should we talk about
Do you want to?
stories separately
Yeah.
than site? I think, because I think the story conversation is straightforward, and then we can kind of talk about site after, and instead of having to talk about 6 different things. We
Sure.
just talk about
Sure. Yep.
2.
But I just want, so, yep.
Is there a question?
I don't know.
Oh.
So I was just responding to Catherine's. I don't know if that sort of answered. There's opportunities.
Thank you.
Do folks want to talk about the stories in and of itself? That way we can kind of maybe narrow down the options a little bit. I think originally I was under the impression there was going to be a significant cost difference. Doesn't look like there's much of a cost difference between 2 and 3. So, any other comments? Story-wise?
Yeah, the cost difference. So also some other things. So from a cost perspective, it's a little more. I think it's under $2 million cost difference, right? When you're looking at a 2-story. Oh wait, let me say it differently.
It was not even, yeah. It was like a few
It's
$100,000.
Couple of hundred
Yeah.
thousand. Sorry, there's so many cost slides here.
Yeah.
From an energy perspective, we did check in with our sustainability consultant. Slight difference, 1 to 2% more energy use with a 2-story versus 3-story. Conversely, you have more roof area that you
Yeah.
can add more PVs to it, right?
Okay.
So it's pretty neutral in that respect. And then we can have the conversation about the classroom orientation separately. But yeah, so from an energy and cost, they're relatively neutral.
And you felt that the classroom organization felt better in the 2-story?
Yeah, I think after spending a lot of time with staff and Dr. Conti's team, talking about the relationships and all of the services that you provide for the students, we started to find ourselves saying, well, what goes on the 3rd floor? And if you put more support services on the 3rd floor, getting to the 1st floor is more problematic, right? So I think that we have 2 ESL classrooms. We have one tutor classroom, 1 lit specialist classroom. So those are evenly dispersed when it's a 2-story building, but then when it became a 3-story building, everything either wanted to be on the 1st floor or the 2nd floor with little services on the 3rd floor. So it started to become pretty imbalanced. And then when we were talking with staff, they were all in support of a 2-story building. Dr. Conti, I don't know if you... sorry, caught you off guard.
I think you described it well. I think they felt programmatically a two-story building would match, but they also acknowledged that going from a one-story to a two is easier for them to think about than going from a one-story to a three. So they talked about that. They mentioned where the specialist rooms are. So with the music room, gymnasium on the first floor, there would just be a lot of traveling. And they didn't say every distance was equivalent in their minds. So it might have even been a shorter distance, Ms. Simon, as we had talked about, but they felt adding in the stairs, especially with some of the specialized population, sort of changed the equation for them. So I think the CLEAR staff favorite, now they didn't consider cost or energy, they were just looking at sort of the day and the student program. They clearly felt like the two-story would better fit what their impression of the building would be and how to get kids around.
Okay. Martha?
I'm not feeling strongly one way or the other about the two-story versus three-story, although the examples given sort of make me lean toward the two-story. And I'm wondering if you wanted to just specifically ask if there are people who want to specifically, give reasons why they would prefer, beyond what we just heard, other people who would prefer the three-story or who would not prefer the second two-story or something.
Go ahead.
I never really gave it a lot of thought until parents mentioned it. And my feeling is that they are the people that are going to, the parents and the teachers and the students are the people that are going to live with the confines of this building, even though we're making the decisions. And I thought it was pretty clear that for a variety of reasons, people preferred two stories. So I'm fine with two-story.
Those aren't hands, are they? Okay. Okay.
Again, speaking of the teachers, it was pretty clear. Even with David and John, sort of the management of the facility, they thought two would just be easier to manage. If it were going to be a $5, $6, $7 million difference, I think that would be something that would weigh in on me significantly. But it seems like it's actually nice in this particular case. It seems like we can take money out of the decision. So with that, I'd rather support the people who are saying they have to live in the building. So, Martha, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other either. I've seen both types of buildings work. We don't have the confines of a site like the school we visited in Springfield, which was a much smaller, narrower site. So we actually have the luxury of money not sort of weighing in and the site being able to handle both buildings. So I guess I would defer to staff then.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that kind of makes us hone in here. I haven't heard anyone. I'm not going to. We're voting next week on the actual choice, so I'm not going to take any votes today. But someone from Danisco, that means we're looking at A and C.
Yeah, let me just get to my summary.
C and D.
If you
Oh,
could
God.
go
Okay.
to slide 35, that might actually
Okay.
be helpful.
Which slides again?
35.
Slide 35. Right, so that's okay.
Oh, okay, go on.
Okay. All right.
Right, and if you, yep,
So
perfect. So,
C and
right,
D,
so we
okay.
have the north side options, 3 stories, 3B, 3D. So if we can just focus on 3D for right now, and then the southeast site options, if we just focus on C1 and 2.
Okay.
Right.
C is the south. Is there like a high level difference between 1 and 2? One is
It's
like
just-
gym
you'll
top
see-
and they're
yeah,
parallel, right?
If you maybe
Just
you
so we
could-
have some nomenclature when
can
we're
you
talking
just
here.
Zoom in, we can focus on them. So C1
Yeah.
has the,
That's the gym at the top,
that
right?
has the gym at the top, right? And with the bus drop off to the north.
Gym and bus to the top, okay.
Right. And then C2 has the building flipped
Yeah,
with the gym at the bottom, with the bus
at the bottom.
at the bottom. And then, right. And you'll see that, we're actually showing you two different ways to organize the driveway, right? And there's pros and cons, and we'll be getting into that, why we put the drive kind of perpendicular to the building on C2. You'll see it's perpendicular versus parallel to the building in C1. And that was just so that we could get the queuing that we need into the site. So we need that extra queuing length, and we can get into that. But there's certainly so many considerations and refinements that will be made. I mean, even just another example is we're showing fields here, and we don't have a final decision on what fields and how many fields. And these fields came out of a preliminary conversation with the rec department, right? So we haven't gotten that far. We're just showing you what your options are and how much it really opens the site by removing the building that's in the center of your site and being able to put a 2-story or 3-story building, kind of tucking it at one end to the other. It just opens up the site.
I've had a few parents ask me why we aren't putting the building right where the parking lot is. In other words, why are we worrying about fields? And I just wonder if there's a reason. Obviously, if you want fields, you try to put the building on one edge or the other and put the fields together. But we don't really have a description of the mission of where we're going with the whole project. And so what's the story? Why do we have fields in there? And would there be a better spot for the building? I'm being asked. I mean, it isn't my question.
No,
I'm
that's
being asked to
totally
bring it
fair,
up.
yeah. So if we look at page 13. Good job. All right, so, yep, that's okay. So, it is going, right? So what we originally had is we had the building, the building that was in the north location tucked up further into the site. And then we're like, we can make it work, preserve more trees, bring the building down, and be able to construct the building in a way that would not impede on the existing operation of the school. So, Chris, to your point, the new school is going in the parking lot where the existing parking is. So,
Yep.
actually, for this option, right? So for the north option, if you maybe just zoom in a little bit, and we do have different phasing plans, but what you'll see is what's hashed in or dotted in red, it would be the contractor area. So if we put the building to the north of the existing building, it's pretty much going in the parking lot of the existing parking lot. We would create a temporary parking lot while the building is being constructed. We actually are able to take advantage of some of the existing roadway, add a drop-off loop for buses, and then maintain the parent circulation as it currently does now. But to answer your question, it is in the parking lot, the
Yeah, so
existing parking lot.
In the northern location,
the
it would have
northern.
to be pretty much in the parking lot.
Yep.
Because that's where all the space is.
Yeah, and we're trying to be mindful and not take down any trees. And you can push it further in, to the site, but that means removal of more trees, and there's cost associated, but more importantly, there's such a beautiful area that to start clearing trees when this could work. But it is possible.
Where that bus drop-off is, that involves clearing trees, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit. So if we go to, let me find that slide here. Each option, let me just see. So that's a 3-story
Oh, I guess it's the
option.
geothermal wells I'm
Yeah, that's the
looking at.
geothermal. So if you could go to slide 12, please.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So the red dots that you're seeing, if you go to slide 12, that's the geothermal wells,
Okay.
right? So those are underground. If you look at the red hatched areas, those are the areas that, of tree removal.
Okay.
It's very slight. Right. So we would take advantage of the existing roads. We would probably, as Westwood comes into the site, we'd make some slight modifications. You can see after our conversation last time with our traffic engineers, we've not made a straight connection through the traffic circle, so we were able to kind of not make that feel like a cut through and have people go the wrong way. But
It looks like the
yes.
building was moved
The
from
building
last
has
time.
been moved.
Yeah.
Yep. We have been studying it now that we had a focus on option 3. We've actually started to actually start working on options. We wanted to be thoughtful about the location, preserving the beautiful site while making sure that we could coexist from construction and operations of the school.
So the rest of that question was basically, what's the story with the fields? Is that just something we came up with and we're really not there?
So you mean why do we have so many fields shown? Is that your question?
And if we,
Sure.
if we go ahead with a plan like one of these, who pays for the fields?
Right, so if you could go to slide 9? Slide 9. Right, that's
It's all
option
about the
3D.
money.
It's the 2-story. So our main goal, very first and foremost, was making sure that we placed this construction, the new school, in an area that you could build while the existing school could remain, be respectful of the site and limit the amount of tree removal required, but also recognizing this is a 50 or longer, 75-year investment, that we don't want to 100% compromise the 2 years of construction, but it obviously has to work, right, for the longevity of your school. So what we did was we laid this out. We made sure we had all the parking, the queuing. We have a dedicated van drop-off area, which would be separate from the parent drop-off area, which would be separate from the bus drop-off area. So we feel really good about the preliminary layout and organization of the circulation for the traffic. Then you have the existing building. So once the new school is built, right, the existing building comes down. We finish the paving. We have some construction phasing sequencing, and so then we have this space left over. And really, this is 2 things. One is, again, we had a preliminary conversation with the rec department, and this was hey, wouldn't this be nice? We haven't
They gonna
really
pay for it?
gotten any further. What was that? Are they
Are they
going to
gonna
pay
pay
for
for
it?
it?
Right. So we haven't gotten to that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Roger.
Sorry, 2 comments. So I think from one perspective, I wouldn't want to break up the available overall things so that you couldn't use the smaller spaces for things. So by being able to put things sort of on the edge, you preserve an open space for some future thing, whether it's
Right.
fields or not.
Right.
For that would be one view. I did have some question about the slope of the property, but whether that fits in the field, but that's detail for later. Mostly, I think you just don't want to break up the space into smaller pieces that you can't reuse for other things.
I'm just wondering, are the fields included in this project? Yes
So-
or no, in the cost and
So
everything
right
else?
now, they're included.
Okay.
But it's not turf, it's grass.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It will be properly graded, it will be, and actually your site is relatively flat except for to the south by the vernal pool, but that too has been thought out and taken into consideration. But proper drainage so that whether it's just grass or fields or whatever, that you're not gonna get flooding. It should drain better, they should be, easier to maintain.
It's a question that people are asking,
Yeah.
and so I can now say, whatever we do with this, the fields are part of the project.
Yep, the way they're designed. We have no lights, like we have no
Okay.
intention of having any lights, like any of your elementary schools don't have lights in the fields. And, even talking with other folks, and again, now that we have focused on option 3, which is great, we can now really talk about what the priorities are. Do you want a couple of little soccer fields? Is soccer more important than softball? Does it make sense just to put back in kind what's there, which is just a softball field, and leave the rest all green? So there are many discussions to be had.
Yeah, I know that some people from conservation are concerned with putting any kind of a soccer field or baseball field because of the vernal pool,
Right.
and protecting people from getting into it, balls going in there or whatever. So whatever we do, if we decide on this design, we have to also make sure we're protecting that somehow.
Yep, absolutely. And we're just showing, really, this is almost to demonstrate how much open space, similar to what Roger was just saying. So instead of making this a sprawling 64,000 square foot, single-story building, by organizing it in such a way and making it a 2-story building, and it's 50% larger, right, that you really are able to take advantage of your beautiful open space, and it can remain open space. It doesn't have to be fields. And we never had any intention of it having lights or anything. So this was really just to represent how much more site you could gain from tucking it either north or south, which truly we don't have an option because the existing building's right in the middle of the site.
Thank
But-
you.
And we hear, we haven't started our conversations about outdoor learning, and there's so many opportunities that we could have outdoor classrooms, pollinator gardens, like we could really get excited and build that in to the site in lieu of some of the fields, right? So if you want, we can go through some of the two distinct kind of differences of the sites, maybe, and we can walk through the differences between the circulation. So we're going to skip the 3-story school, and then slide 9, she's good. Yep, awesome. So again, as I stated, our goal was for any of these options is to have separate parent drop-off, van drop-off, and bus drop-off, right? And we've been able to do that with any of the options. It was important to, at minimum, provide the same amount of queuing for the school as currently exists. We think there's opportunities as well for the road around the parking lot area to also be wider so that you can actually maximize and have, for evening events and things like that, you can have more cars, right? So if we go to the next slide, and then maybe zoom in a little bit, it'll be easier just for people to focus on that. Yep. So what we've done here from a traffic perspective, maybe you can scoot over just a little bit, Christine, so people can see the legend. Yep, maybe up a little bit, sorry, so I can see the legend. I know, I'm very demanding. So what we have here is, we've also thought through the traffic, the circulation patterns. Again, this is just a start. We have a meeting with public safety on Friday. to talk, to get their input, right? What are we missing? What else should we be thinking about as we laying this out? Is there a concern whether the buildings to the north or to the south, do they have any thoughts about either one of those, which we feel is also equally important. So what we have here is the traffic, it really, for the most part, for any of the options. You'll see the vans are in the purple and magenta, the cars are in the blue, and then the buses are in the yellow. And there's some green interspersed with service. So we have enough space that we could queue both the vans and the parent drop-off area. Parents would drop off in the front right before the entry because we know that's where they're going to stop regardless, right? And then the vans could come in. So what you're seeing, the stars, those are what we're called control points. And so this would require a couple of staff or a staff at each one of those areas that they would just make sure and monitor the cars and the vans so that when they do have to cross, that the parents stop while a van pulls in or vice versa. We also have, as we enter the roundabout, right, so, or traffic circle, it's counterclockwise, but the buses, we also have another control point so that the buses can come and enter, and there would be someone there to monitor cars from entering the circle, the traffic circle, as a bus approaches and enters to the back and then coming back out. I think there are currently 7 buses. We don't anticipate them being more than that, right? So we feel that this really is, should be very manageable with only 7 buses. You currently have 2 crossing guards. We would recommend they're maintained. The sidewalk on Fox Hill Road is on the left, so I don't believe it's any intention of adding a sidewalk on the right-hand side, so maintaining that. If we maintain that sidewalk, we would be having the students go counterclockwise to the traffic, right, and stay on the left-hand side. A crossing guard would have them cross Westwood, and then they would cross with another traffic control person there, so they
This would be
can
an
enter.
addition, the third crossing, the existing second crossing guard is actually off of this.
Oh, she's down there. So this,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
recommendation, and maybe it's only one crossing guard, you know, we, again, working with public safety, what they think, having conversation with the transportation folks at the school department and really being able to flesh this out with what makes the most sense and viable. And I guarantee you, this will change as we start developing this. But this, you know, allows the students to cross safely, and we're just trying to maintain them staying on the sidewalks where there's traffic control or transportation. If you go to the next slide, here you go. It talks about the pedestrian circulation. So again, just, right, so because, so we really only need one. We were suggesting maybe another one. We don't want students to think that they could just go right and then you have cars coming, whatever. So, you know, this does need to be fleshed out a lot more, but our initial thoughts are this seems to make sense with 2 to 3 control points, which is not uncommon, right, with school buildings. But this really separates all of the activities quite well and provides sufficient queuing for the parents coming onto site. And then the next slide, we started looking at, this just tells you what the site impacts would be to the, if the building was to the north of the existing school. So again, the hatched red are the areas for tree removal as we understand it today. We have the red dots, that's our ground source heat pump or geothermal wells that would work very well here. Again, you want the geothermal wells to be near the receiving and the mechanical spaces. So again, just just thinking about the relationships, not programmatically, but also for building use is important. We would also have the receiving area and trash and dumpsters, et cetera, kind of by the bus drop-off area as well, so that those services are not entering the site and all the way in. So that's why we were locating them there. And then we can talk about where the outdoor playground goes, right? We've heard a lot from people saying that, putting the playground over by the field so that it's accessible to everyone, parents, everyone can come and use it, and doesn't feel like it's hidden or tucked away behind the building. We can certainly do that. We also want to continue to explore a playground for the younger kids, a playground for the older kids, one big playground for a universal or fully accessible equipment. So there's so many more conversations to be had. But what this shows you is,
I was just saying, I don't know if I want a playground next to the receiving area.
right, so that we agree, right? So, do we move the receiving? Do we move the gym? Do we tuck the gym in the back? We just want to be thoughtful about what people are going to see and feel when they show up. Do we want the trash and the receiving at the entrance and what you see as well, right? So there are totally different ways of screening everything, how we can approach it. And then we did, if you just go to the next slides, we've talked about the phasing. Again, the phase 1, we would have the contractor zone as shaded in red, and they'd be able to do the geothermal wells, right? We would also create a temporary staff parking, and while the building is fenced off and zoned for construction use, the existing school would remain. We would have to probably create a temporary play area as well for this option. And then if you go to the next slide. This would be phase 2. So once the new school is built, we would vacate the existing building. Everyone moves into their new home. We would then reverse the fence, and so the existing building would then be turned over to the contractor. We would maintain the temporary parking so that now the parents would go through the temporary parking for drop-off and pickup, and then we would have the bus loop completed at that point, right? And then the last phase would be that we organize this in such a way that now everyone's in, and we would complete the site work and then turn it over to the school. And then the last slide just gives you an idea of and if you want to zoom out a little bit, there you go, right? So again, it really opens up the site. What we need to do is actually show an aerial view of what it currently looks like compared to what it is. And again, does not have to be play fields. You can embrace the site for its natural beauty, for outdoor learning opportunities, for whatever it is that you would like. This really just represents the vastness of the open space that you'll benefit from. And then, did you want to add? Yep.
So actually, before we move on, I wanted to just talk a little bit about how we site the building and how we start the process. When we look at how the spaces are organized together, we also look at how the classrooms are oriented, and I think Donna had mentioned the north-south orientation, which is really ideal when you're looking at classroom orientation because it allows you to have windows in such a way that it minimizes glare, right? So on the north side, when you have classrooms on the north side, there is no direct sunlight that you need to control. So shades can be open almost all day long. And that really helps with energy consumption because, on nice days, you don't need to turn on that many lights. And then on the south side, we can control the sunlight a little bit better because during many of the seasons, the sun is at a high angle, and we can use overhangs or solar shades in such a way that it, again, doesn't require the use of shade. So locating the school on the north side of the site does allow that north-south orientation, which is not possible on the other location. So we just wanted to point out some big differences between the two options, the siting options.
And then if we want to, why don't we just go to slide 22, right. All right. So what we'll do is we'll just focus, and we agree, there were some comments about having the bus loop up against the neighbors, and we agree, we have different options, different configurations, just showing if we put the gym, to the south, that you have a better orientation for the classrooms. But again, preliminary, and we're really excited. You can see that there's so much thought, and we'll continue to have these conversations as we go along. But for the two-story option, right, very similar, that we would have the two crossing guards. The traffic circle pretty much functions the same way. You would have a drop-off. Perfect. Yeah, the next one.
Oh, can I
Yep.
make a comment on the car one?
Sure.
I know I've done a lot of work with the Safe Routes to School, and I know we've looped in Judy, but the parents are gonna have to turn left into oncoming buses on this one. So that's my only concern of that one.
Yep, so we would have a control point there, and agreed. This, if you, there are 7 buses, right? In the morning, it's probably a bigger, right? The buses come as they arrive, and in the afternoon, they're probably stationed there, I think, right? Or
No.
So you would need a control point, yep, to be able to make sure that parents do not cross when the buses arrive. This allows the receiving and the vehicles that come in for receiving and trash and recycling, again, to be to the north, not going to the south where the neighbors are, and locating the receiving to the north as well really limits the impact, or having those vehicles and traffic come into the building and the site. This is very similar the way we've oriented the other one, right? So we have cars independent of vans, independent of the buses. And then if we go to the next slide, that's the pedestrian slide. And it's just a longer walk, right? They get more steps in. It's great for them. We've created a trail to the south or the north, right? So students, ideally, they don't really have to, they don't cross traffic other than at the circle. It's just a little further walk. And it's probably not much further than what they currently walk because of where the existing building is. Again, we're able to provide enough queuing, parking, and if you want more parking, it's just less green space, right? So, there's certainly opportunities and trade-offs. And if you just go to the next slide, please. So what you'll see here, and I'm going to let Vivian jump in as well, but because of the driveway coming in to the north, we would have to remove some trees to the north, and then to have access, and again, we'll confirm this on Friday, but we've never heard that a public safety, fire, police do not want 360-degree access around a building. So that is why we're saying we need to cut down some trees. We have a lot of grading there, and we need that access, a 360-degree access around the building. Vivi, do you want to talk about, and then you can see we have the geothermal wells dotted in, which are adjacent to the mechanical spaces, so that you're not putting them far away from the services.
So this site, the southeast area from the preliminary geotech report shows that there's quite a bit of unsuitable soils in this area, so we would over excavate by about 7 feet. Unsuitable, oh, that makes a big difference. Right, so basically there are layers of fill that are not suitable to build a building on. So that means we have to take 7 feet of, average of 7 feet of soil out from the building footprint and 5 feet beyond, and then bring back new fill that's structurally stable. So there's quite a bit of earthwork. The north area, we're averaging about 4 feet of unsuitable removal, so it's a little bit less. This side also has a pretty good grade change when you move from north to south. So on the north side, there are the wetlands that kind of drop off pretty steeply, so we will need a good sized retaining wall. You'll see that big heavy line, Chris, yeah, there you go, yeah.
Actually, just zoom in, that would be great.
Yeah, yes, thank you. So the grade drop there is, averages from 4 feet to 12 feet. So there's going to be a pretty good size retaining wall there that will provide railing so that it has some safety features so kids can't run off and jump off the side. And then as you move to the south, close to the Vincent Street neighborhood, we do need to remove a good amount of trees, and there's a knoll that we'll need to kind of flatten out to grade out that area to provide the driveway access around the south side of the school. Right now, we're not showing a wall there. It may be that we might need a little bit of a wall right next to the vernal pool. So because we're building next to the vernal pool buffer zone, there are many things that we have to consider. Runoff is one of them, groundwater is another. The noise factor during construction, there's 2 years of construction. We're outside the 200-foot buffer, but we don't know, how that's going to impact the wildlife habitat. There's also lights on the building. There are no lights on the fields, but there will be lights on the building that will be required for security purposes. We typically mount cameras on the outside of the buildings, and cameras usually need lights so that they can actually record. And we typically place these lights on motion sensors, right? So if nothing runs across the field, then the lights won't go on. But if there's a deer, there's wildlife, the lights might go on and off. So there are many more considerations that, that we can address for sure, but we just need to be cognizant of them. And because of the grade drops, the differences, it really does, there's more limitation as to the length of the building than building on the north. So we're looking at turning the building, kinking it, and looking at minimizing the footprint. The 2-story version definitely does have a bigger footprint than the 3-story, so it does, we do really need to study the grading much more than we have.
Can I just, on this one slide, you had noted the temporary playground required limited play areas. Can you speak to any, some of this construction phasing, which
Sure.
would be more impactful?
So if you go to the next slide.
Overall, which one would be more impactful to the students?
So I think it depends on how you look at it and you approach it, right? How we've been thinking through the construction phasing for the building to the south of the existing building. As you can see, we're maintaining our footprint and even the paved area for public safety access around the building outside of the 200-foot vernal pool buffer. But we can't push it too much further west or northwest because we're really encroaching on the existing building. So as we start looking at this, we were like, okay, well, if we put the building here, we're going to have a construction fence around it. What does that mean? We can maintain the existing parking lot that's currently there, which is great. And what that does mean, though, is that we're recommending a bus drop-off, a temporary bus drop-off loop that will bring the buses to the rear of the existing building while we have the parents queuing through the existing parking lot. And then we would need a temporary playground or something that we would create right there. And you know, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but early site packages are certainly possible, that we can start doing some of this work in advance of the full contractor coming on site. So we've already started thinking about how can we prime and prep the site maybe while school's not in session, right? So that we can take advantage and hit the ground running. But so this, we would create the road that comes in. And then if you go to the next slide.
Just before you
Yeah.
go, what's the distance from the existing school to the new building in that lower corner?
Feet.
10 feet?
Is it? Actually, yeah.
They're going to have a great view.
Yeah. Well, they'll love it, right? We actually put like peekaboos in the scrim of the fence because kids love watching this. Yeah, it's great. It's great. So, you know, 10, 15 feet, that's luxurious to us in some instances. We've had such tight sites and constraints that we've not been able to even complete the front entry of a building until the old building has been torn down. So I know you all are saying, whoa, this is not a big site. We're saying you are so fortunate to have all of this space. But so yes, the new construction would be close to the existing building. The good news is if there's one benefit of this great snowflake is that the impact is only to that one pod to the south, right? So we've also located geothermal wells. We'll have to study it more, and if we go that route, we will confirm how many geothermal wells that we actually will need. But as you can see, the geothermal wells do need to be done prior to the building to be completed, which means we have to find the room within the confines of the construction zone for the first phase. And then if you go to the next.
Before you switch to the next
Yeah.
slide, I don't see how how there's that current drop-off.
It's going counterclockwise.
Okay, the current drop-off is not expected. There's no cars expected to go through that 10, 15-foot
No.
space. Okay.
That
okay.
would be so.
That's why you put the buses in
Yeah.
the back. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would have the contractor entrance, right? So they would come in and pretty much have a binder road or whatever it is at the top that they would come in and enter there. So there would be clear separation of contractor and school functions. And then if you go to the next slide, right, again, very similar, we would keep the parking lot that's currently there. We definitely would need a lot of control points as we look at how to navigate buses, cars for the temporary, for phase 2 as we demolish the existing building. But then when we're finished and we move the students into the new school, we then would the second phase would be to finish the fields afterwards, or the site, I shouldn't say fields, whatever.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
The traffic circle that's being proposed, is that part of the school building project, or is that going to be considered a municipal project?
It's part of this project.
Okay, thank you.
And then if you just go to and then it will just show you what the current thinking of the massing of, if you go to the next slide. Yeah. And then we can go through the same exercise conversation of flipping the parking and the building. So there's, everything's to the south of the site, but we had the same reservations, I think, as Catherine mentioned, just showing the options that are available. And, you know, this does kink the building a little bit more. We're able to kink it and not make it feel so long or linear, but we think there's still other ways that we can do it with the drive and the buses to the north of the site as well. And then, you know, we didn't go through the whole phasing, but this, all of the attributes remain the same. If you want to just flip through that, Christina, right? Yep, you can just keep going. Right, very similar layouts, control points, pedestrian, separated from bus, separated from car, separated from van. I mean, again, you're so fortunate that this is easy for us to come up with solutions because you have the space. And again, the fields, quote unquote fields or lines that we've been drawing really were initial conversations, but also just gives you a sense and scale of how much more open space that you'll actually have once your new building is complete. And it's just great, and you can take advantage of your beautiful site. So, and you know, we can talk about where does the playground go as opposed to maybe the paved area for recess during before or after lunch. Right, so there's so many opportunities here and decisions to be made as we move forward. Yeah, we're pretty excited. Yep. Keep going. And so here we are. So I think what we're hearing is next week. Any feedback you have for this week, we can modify, we can tweak. To have a conversation next week, but we'll focus on 3D and then 3C, 1 and 2. Right. And then just to give you an update on where we are. Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, yes. Sure.
Oh, Martha, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I when I looked at the presentation in advance, I kind of focused on the page for each of the options. It said site impacts and considerations. And I just want to refer back to that now. And so if we look at the north two-story school, I saw a lot of positives. There's, you know, the footprint is what it is. The additional roof area for the PV is, I think, a positive. It is far from the vernal pool, and I know there's been concern about protecting the vernal pool. The optimal north-south classroom orientation, which Vivian mentioned, and it requires the minimal paving, so we haven't talked much about that, but impervious surface is what environmentalists call pavement, and it means that the water doesn't go through it, and typically the goal of making things more environmentally friendly is to have less impervious surface. So I think that's a factor we need to consider. It's quite a bit more impervious surface. I've even had community members say, what about putting in a parking garage so we have less impervious surface, because a two-story parking garage would take up half as much room. I don't know that that's in the purview of this project, but I think it's an important factor. And the last thing here is relatively flat development area. So again, there's less digging and grading and retention walls and those kinds of things. If we then look at the two-story school, oh, wait a minute. Let's see. And then under site impacts, it seems that there's a less tree removal. And it's a large property. Pardon?
Which one are you?
This, I'm on site option 3D, two-story, page 12 on the.
Thank you.
That work?
Yep.
12,
Yep.
page 12, okay. So if you look at the bullets on the right, it's my understanding there's less tree removal with this option, and there's some people, I love trees. Everybody who knows my history knows. I do think that if we need to take down trees to build this project, that there are plenty of trees, and we can even put some trees onto the site, as was mentioned by the landscape person. But there is less tree removal in this option. The building is 470 feet from the vernal pool buffer. I also want to say as an aside that none of these options have any building within the buffer zones of the wetlands and the vernal pool. So we are following state regulations and local regulations, and any additional protections that we can do for the vernal pools is a good thing in my mind. But there's no question that these are meeting all of the standards of protecting vernal pools. However, this building is 470 feet away from the vernal pool, whereas the southeast site would be 65 feet from the vernal pool, from the vernal pool buffer. And so that seems to me a positive thing in terms of protecting the vernal pool. The construction is also, it's 85 feet from the existing occupied building, so there would be a lot less disruption than the 10 or 15 feet from the occupied building. And it is only a 2-year or less than 2-year process, but people have raised concerns about the disruption during the construction project, and that's another factor. The amount of unsuitable soil that has to be replaced is less in the north. That seems like a benefit, a plus. I don't know, they both have a high water table. I'm not sure if there's one or the other that's a benefit. And if we go to slide 25, I guess it is, it does have a little more tree removal. The grade change will require more, digging and building retaining walls. And by putting the building 65 feet from the vernal pool, then we have a building, as Vivian was mentioned, that is going to be in use. It's going to be in use a lot of the time. It's going to be a lot of people activity. I did listen to the Conservation Commission meeting on a recording. I was unable to attend it last week. And I heard repeated a number of times that one of the big concerns is keep not having so many people there. And I don't quite understand, but somehow they decided that having fields would put more people near the vernal pool. And I don't see how having fields that are used during daylight hours would give more people near the vernal pools than having a school that's operating full-time during the school year and part-time over the summer. They also, and they also mentioned, and you all got a letter from the Conservation Commission with concerns. They mentioned that if the building was put there, then we could put native plantings, and there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't put native plantings there if there were fields there. So native plantings could be a support to the natural resource area. They could be a buffer for loose balls. I'd be happy to have us say, well, we need to put a fence in there to catch loose balls. So I think that the letter from Bill raises some very important issues if we build on the north side. But I don't see them as problematic. I see them as things to be mitigated. So loose balls, we can put in a fence. They also were not aware that the school committee has a policy that we use only organic fertilizers on the fields. So whatever fields would go in would not have the chemical fertilizers that there was a concern about. As Donna mentioned, we don't have any lighting on any of our elementary schools, and obviously this would not be a good field to put, if we have the building in the north, this would not be a good field to put a light on because of the vernal pools. That would be, to me, a no-brainer. There was a concern about off-road vehicles, and I think we all know that there are off-road vehicles in this area already. And if we build the building in the southeast section, we'd be building driveways for the off-road vehicles, I think, to get into the woods. So I don't see that as an advantage for the southern one. And then, I think there are other issues. So they did not have the cost information when Bill brought them the letter. Since then, we found out it would cost about $2 million more to build in the southern section than in the northern section. And I agree that the 2-story, 3-story difference was not terribly big, but $2 million could get us a lot of other features, or could lower people's tax bill. And I think that the $2 million difference in the price between the north and the south is really important to consider. Again, puts me in favor of the north. I also wanted to mention, in terms of the north-south orientation, which is much better in the north than it is in the southeast section. Vivian mentioned a number of issues in terms of the glare and in terms of that, but it's broader than that. I think for example, if there's glare, teachers can put the shades down, but people's experience has been that teachers will put the shade down and then forget to put it back up. So again, we're reducing the amount of daylight in the classroom, and we're adding to the amount of energy that we use to light the rooms, because from all the new schools I visited, no matter how many stories high they were or whatever they were, there are ways now to build in lighting systems in classrooms that adjust based on how much daylight there is. So that would be going on, and if you pull the shades down, then there's less daylight, that kind of thing. There's also a lot of benefits to the daylight in addition to saving energy. The research has shown that there's better sleep quality for kids who are sitting through a day in daylight, or I guess probably adults. There's even evidence that it improves test scores and better performance on assignments. And also that daylight can reduce stress. And I think we all are aware that if you're in a room with no natural light, and you go into a place with natural light, we know what that feels like. So I see that as another real positive thing for the northern site. I don't know any neighbors on Vincent Road who want the building over on the southeast section. So different people have different opinions, and that's fine. But I do think that all these, when I looked at the site impacts for the two buildings, to me, it's obvious that we should do the northern site. I've been listening and waiting to hear a reason why it should be in the southeast section. And the arguments that we heard from Bill's letter didn't really convince me, because they were either things that could be mitigated or maybe not included. I want to also add that the Conservation Commission did not have anyone present any other reasons why it would be beneficial or not beneficial to build the building next to the vernal pool. They didn't ask for our experts, who we are paying a lot of money. That's what town meeting supplied us with, money to pay our experts. And they didn't invite them to speak to them before they sent this letter. So I had a concern about that. And I'm concerned that the issues that were raised are kind of fears that people have. And I think they're all important issues that we need to address. But I think there's also several other issues. And I kind of wish that the Conservation Commission would go back and look at the advantage of the north-south orientation and energy efficiency. I mean, if our planet warms up too far, there aren't going to be any vernal pools to protect. And it may seem like a little thing because it's just one school building in our town, but we all got to do it somehow. And there really won't be any vernal pools left the way the climate is changing. And so I think it's important to look at all the other factors in addition to the issues that were raised. So, and I'm open to hearing. I know we're not voting tonight. I'd like to hear if there are other reasons that people have. But those are the issues I've been learning about.
Thank you. Bill?
Okay, here we go. Well, thank you for having me on such short notice, really. The Conservation Commission met last Thursday. We're not meeting again until mid-December because of the holiday, so we realize you'll be making your decision before then, so we wanted to get our thoughts organized and presented. Spent a lot of discussion about my letter before I even presented my letter, which is interesting process tonight, but I did indeed. So I wrote the letter, the Conservation Commission edited it and approved it unanimously based on the factors that the Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over. We don't have jurisdiction over the energy of the buildings or things of that nature. So we were looking at it in terms of what we have jurisdiction over and what we felt with the information we had at hand at the time, we didn't have cost information available, gave us a position to take. So I'm going to go over the letter and add some comments as I go along. The Burlington Conservation Commission wanted to weigh in on the discussion for the location of the new Fox Hill Elementary School. As you are aware, there are several wetland resource areas on the school property, most significant of which is the vernal pool. Protection of that pool is a high priority. And the Concom felt that the south location for the new school was a better choice for the following reasons. First, of the 4 wetland areas identified on the site, the vernal pool is by far the most important and the most sensitive. It may very well be the largest vernal pool in Burlington, and it deserves maximum protection. It may seem counterintuitive that we took a position of asking for the building to be further away from the vernal pool, but we feel that in some ways the vernal pool, the building itself is another buffer to the vernal pool in terms of activity approaching the vernal pool. Having the option, a 3D, further away from the vernal pool in the drawing that we saw had suggested softball field and soccer fields directly abutting the vernal pool zone, buffer zone limit. Foul balls, home runs, misplaced soccer balls, spectators, trash, and a lot of foot traffic on those areas could easily intrude into the buffer and into the protected resource area. Keep in mind also that the Burlington regulations define a vernal pool as the wet area plus 100 feet. And then beyond that is a 100-foot buffer. So that 200-foot buffer around a vernal pool really only protects the vernal pool during the breeding season. That's when the animals come in there and do their breeding and lay their eggs. They don't live there. They then go away, and they live 600 feet, 800 feet, sometimes a quarter of a mile away from the vernal pool in which they visit every spring. So a lot of them, during the off-season I call it, the non-breeding season, summer and winter, they live upland in the ground in little burrows, and they eat the bugs and they eat the worms. And with people walking around on that can cause their burrows to be crushed. They can cause hardening of the soil and make it less habitable for them. So unrestricted foot traffic can be detrimental. And we're trying to minimize that around the vernal pool. We also had concerns about mowing and fertilizing of the fields, with fields directly next to the vernal pool. If you're going to be mowing and maintaining those fields, it could have impact on the vernal pool. It would have to be made extremely clear where the border of the mowing and the fertilizing would stop. And we felt that those fields, if the school were there, would be on the other side of the school, and that type of activity would not be intruding into the vernal pool area. And with the school at the closer to the vernal pool site, the small area in back of the school, there's a couple of playgrounds there, but from my understanding, that was going to be more for preschool, first grade, less active than running and ball playing and out on the fields. And that could also be perhaps naturalized with trees, shrubs, native grasses, rather than have mowed grass that could, again, intrude into the vernal pool area. So a barrier against any inadvertent mowing of the vernal pool is desirable. It can be a naturally planted area, a fence, or a combination of both. With fields there, I know you say they'll never be lighted. because that's a school policy. But I've seen things changed in this town beyond what was originally intended. If there's a nice field there and there's a need for nighttime fields, at some point somebody may want to light it. And we planned this building to be there for 50 or 75 years, as was said, and the best defense against that kind of decision-making in the future is to put a barrier up. And if there were lights on the field on the other side of the building would shield those lights from the vernal pool itself. And any kind of lighting into the vernal pool, especially during breeding time, would be detrimental to the occupants of the vernal pool. Now, I realize there has to be some kind of security lighting behind the school, but that can be directed downward. It can be focused on the property and not into the vernal pool as much as possible with today's technology. The evidence of off-road vehicles, we talked about that. I personally have seen such tracks many times. Often, I live on Fox Hill Road, and very often, as soon as it snows, up goes a snowmobile up the street to the school. I see four-wheelers and dirt bikes regularly up the street towards the school and down the street towards the power lines. Those are the places they want to go because it's not on the street, it's interesting, it's fun, or whatever. And you can see the damage as you go through the trails and sometimes in the conservation area along there behind the school. So we felt that having a big physical school there would be more of a barrier to those type of vehicles tending to get into the vernal pool and the protected areas. Although some of the plans for the building being closer to the vernal pool would require greater impervious roadway surface, perhaps with a longer roadway to get there, the main concern is that the water stays on the site. And all of the water that falls on those impervious surfaces would be required to be captured into treatment of a sump, controlled catch basin and remain on the site. Both options show impact somewhat into the 100-foot buffers of the two smaller wetland areas to the northeast, but both options were designed to stay beyond the 50-foot no-build zone in those areas, so they could be permitted. So neither option, north or south for the building, had a preference, in our opinion, based on that, based on the roadway surface or the intrusion into those two smaller wetland areas. So in terms of the siting, those were the issues that we thought about. We really felt that having the school there and a smaller playground behind it with natural planting would be a physical barrier, another buffer to the wetland area. Now, another concern that we had, which isn't siting related, but there is some talk of capturing the rooftop water for non-potable uses, basically using it to assist in flushing toilets and needing less water from the town supply. That would result in rooftop water leaving the site via the sewer system. So all the water that would fall on the roof that normally would be captured and infiltrated in some fashion and stay on the site would now go down the toilets and out into the sewer system. That could lead to a reduction in groundwater and possibly affect the hydrology that supports the wetland areas in the vernal pool. It's a complex issue. We don't fully understand what it could be. We would like to hear a wetland hydrologist be consulted and help us understand what impact that might have before a decision is made to do it. You got to realize a vernal pool has a complex seasonal hydrology. It does dry out in most seasons and then rehydrate in the summer and the winter melt off in the spring. And it must do that or it's not a vernal pool by definition. And the benefit of it doing that is by drying out, certain predators, namely fish, cannot live there. So sensitive animals can safely go there, mate, lay their eggs. There'll be no predation of those eggs. And there's a certain significant number of species that live only in a vernal pool because there are no fish. So, and they cannot exist anywhere else. So significant changes to the amount of water that enters and leaves the property could adversely affect the hydrology of the vernal pool. So we're just not certain how that might affect the vernal pool if that was part of the plan. So, based on the information we had and the concerns that we voiced at the meeting the other night, we decided that the site designated as 3C, the southern location of the new building, with respect to strictly vernal pool conservation issues, was our preferred site. We're not taking a flag and sticking it in the ground and say it must be here. I mean, that's just one factor that you all have to consider. And you have a lot of factors to consider. I mean, this is one of them. I mean, you've got to worry about cost, educational programs, safety of the children, traffic, environmental, concerns for the neighbors. I don't envy you. But, you know, all we ask is that you hear our concerns and give them appropriate weight in your decision-making process. So thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you.
Okay.
If we,
Yeah,
if we have time, I'd like for Donna to, or Vivian probably, talk about how the water will stay on the property, and it may be out of the scope of tonight's meeting, but maybe in the future when because this sustainability working group is meeting this week, maybe we can talk some more about the net zero waste option and how that affects hydrology in the neighborhood. Is there a brief answer to that, or is it?
Well, we actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we had a conversation with our environmental wetland specialist, who also understands all of the importance of the hydrology, and she's suggested that if we do want to pursue the rainwater harvesting, that we do engage and conduct a hydrology study. Yep. So that
Okay,
was
good.
very helpful.
Glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, I'm listening very carefully and read your letter, et cetera. I guess my question would be, and maybe for you all, is building that building closer to the vernal pool going to disrupt the wildlife more than a building farther away from it? I mean, that's something I thought about.
Sure.
So I'm not sure, again, when you're weighing, like, you're going to have 2 years of disruption right there. And I wonder if that's going to scare away whatever is going to come in and lay their eggs and whatever, with all that noise and construction going on. So that was just kind of something I thought about too.
No, that's a legitimate concern, but we're also thinking the 50 years afterwards, that, you know, that might be a better environment after the fact. There's always going to be disturbance during the construction, no matter what's going on there. There's a lot of things going on there. It's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of vibration and everything else. But these animals are pretty remarkable in that they will go back to the same location every single year of their life. And they'll be there, whether there's construction going on or not. They don't really have a choice as long as their access isn't denied. Okay.
Go ahead, Jen.
So I just was wondering who on the Conservation Commission specializes in vernal pools, and have you guys looked at the research from like Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program that talks about habitat fragmentation, and it pretty much talks about roadways and parking lots being a way to block access for these animals. And it seems like the southeast option creates a lot of roadways, pathways, and parking lots that would block access to space that those animals would be accessing typically. I also understand the thoughts around the natural landscape in regards to the playground that's closest to it, but we also have, accessibility is not the right word, but like the kids have different levels of needs to get to things, and everybody should have the ability to access things. So as great as some scapes look for aesthetic purposes, it's not accessible for all the students that we'll be servicing at the location.
I don't really have expertise on the Pennsylvania study you're referring to. To me, I always understood that the idea of having a roadway on the migration path of these animals was more concerned about worrying about them getting run over on the way. You know, it's not going to stop them from crossing it, but I think they would get run over on the way was the concern if it was an actual road that had regular traffic. That's just my understanding.
What? All right.
My comment is not in regards to vernal pools, so I can wait until everyone else has finished asking.
I just wanted to thank you for bringing to our attention. I think the Conservation Commission plays a really important role in town and in every town. And things about, I didn't know what a vernal pool, I knew it was some kind of wetland, but I had no idea the complexity of what a vernal pool really entails. And I find it interesting. And I think that it's important for us to maintain our good relationship with the Conservation Commission, and I appreciate you bringing all of this to our attention.
Well, I certainly appreciate the sincerity with which you and the design and everything else have been willing to protect, the entire boundaries that we have requested around these wetland areas. It is significant. It is in today's environment, as was pointed out. As things warm up, we might not even have vernal pools in the future if we're not careful. So we need to protect what we have as long as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, I just have a quick question, sorry. Is there concerns now with the current fields being placed where they are at Fox Hill? I mean, since they are up against the vernal pools currently?
I don't think that pool is protected as it could be. The off-road vehicles is a good example. I mean, they're not saying, well, here's the 200-foot boundary, I'm not going to go beyond that. There was tracks right through them when we did our site walk the other day. There were two-wheel or four-wheel tracks going right through the boundary to the vernal pool. Sometimes in these seasons when they dry up, you don't realize that it's a vernal pool. I see people walking their dog down the street towards Fox Hill School, and an hour later they come back and the dogs are soaking wet. You know they've been letting them go and running around in the vernal pool. So it's hard to control now. I don't know if we can do much to help it make it better in the future, but I'd like to try. Yep.
Yeah, I think that the vehicles, snowmobiles, et cetera, I mean, they go through all the conservation land behind our house. They don't care, unfortunately, unless you've got someone, police officers standing there 24/7. It's hard to stop. And I get it, right? It's frustrating.
My favorite was, just as a slight aside, I was leading a conservation walk through the Sawmill Conservation Area around the reservoir, and a four-wheeler came by, and it was being filmed on BCAT, and as they went by, they pleasantly gave us the finger and kept going. So, that's what some people think about protecting of the natural environment. So.
I have one other point. Having been a mom of kids playing softball, baseball, I spent a lot of time at that field behind Fox Hill School. And it's not a great spot for a field.
Currently, no, though. I mean, the field itself is in terrible condition, and it's soggy, and
It was always like buggy.
You can thank the vernal pool for that, too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I thought it was just not a good setting for a field.
You ever been to Regan Park?
Yes, many times.
But, my concern is, to talk about, look at the talk about having a new gymnasium. The current gymnasium has been there for 60 years or whatever, and it's not an attraction. You put in a new state-of-the-art gymnasium, it suddenly becomes an attraction for other aspects of the town. And I think the same could happen if you put in new fields that are level and dry and, properly maintained. I liked your comments about why do we even need to put a baseball field or a soccer field there? Let's turn it into a beautiful wildlife and educational greenland for people, I like that idea. Yes, Roger.
I think the Rec Commission probably would say that there's a great demand for fields, and we have to put them somewhere.
Yes, and I agree. And that, to me, is one of the reasons why I think 10 years from now, the Rec Commission is going to say there's a great demand for lighted fields, and so let's turn some lights on in some of these places. Yeah.
If I could just address that, I think regardless of which location, we have to file an order of conditions,
yes.
Right? And so one of the items of the order of conditions could be no lighting can ever occur.
Yes, that could be part of the order of conditions
Right.
that's submitted for the notice of
Yeah.
intent. And it could be one of those ones that is in perpetuity. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Martha.
I also wanted to just say that both at the Conservation Commission, what people were talking about, and when you've referred to tonight, Bill, The concern about unrestricted foot traffic. I really don't understand why putting the building there makes anyone think there'll be less foot traffic. If there's a building there with 350 students and 70 staff and receiving going around the side, I just don't understand how that, so I think we all want the same thing, but I don't see at all how putting a building there would be helpful to the vernal pool. And that's just one of the examples.
We were envisioning that strip directly behind the school, directly against the buffer zone to the vernal pool.
But there'd also be lights coming out of the building.
Yes, that's an issue.
I mean, there are just a number of issues that, to me, make sense to not put it near the vernal pool. So,
there's pluses and minuses to both,
yeah.
for sure.
And I do appreciate having these issues raised, too, because they are important issues for us to address.
I got Jeremy on the phone. Oh, I did.
Yeah, I was just going to address the Recreation Commission comment. Yes, there is a big demand for more fields.
Thanks, Jeremy. Tara, did you want to jump in here?
It's not in regards to the vernal pool, but I don't know if we're ready to move on.
So Vivian, to say one thing. Yep.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
To clarify, does the Conservation Commission request that we do not have a playground then on the backside of the school? That it should be all natural?
No, we weren't. We just were thinking that that would be a less intrusive type of play area than a ball field.
Okay.
And it could also, have some nature around it rather than a lawn that needs to be mowed and things of that nature.
So paving it is okay, having kids play back there is okay?
I can think that would be
Okay,
one of the least imposing options.
great, thank you.
I would just like to comment that I think we've talked about the fact that they heavily use the fields currently. So I think the softball field is one of the biggest uses of recess. So I am more in favor of having at least a field. And I think if you run the risk of there's grass there, they'll just turn it into a field. They have the Gaga pit, there's the softball, the kickball. There's more use, I think, and Tara and Ian can comment too, but I think there's more use of a field type area at Fox Hill now than, and like they'd want a basketball area. So I'm not sure. I just want you to have the right impression. There's no preschoolers. It's heavy use of these play areas.
Exactly, which is why we want the play areas away from the vernal pool.
But aren't you suggesting they be right next to the vernal pool?
The little playgrounds. If you
Okay.
look at the
And then
option 3C,
but the
fields are-
playground needs to be adjacent to the teachers can't have two different areas.
Well, not in the drawing we looked at. I think that might be one of these drawings are all still,
Okay.
tentative at the best. But, what we looked at, that with a couple of small playground areas behind the school was not going to be as intrusive as having a ball field right there, as you said, that's heavily used. I mean, you can go there now and find all kinds of balls, golf balls and everything else in the vernal pool area. People go up there and use it as a as a driving range. It happens. But if the school was there, they couldn't aim it. They couldn't aim it at the vernal pool.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm gonna move us along a little bit. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Tara.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to quickly comment about the location with the two choices. After talking with some staff members after these plans came out, there were concerns around this southeast site and having the fields, as we're talking about, at the front of the school, and just how in such close proximity to the road and how far away the students would be from the teachers and the playground. Because the way the fields are, we currently have kids in the woods all the time, and we have to go in there trying to get them out. So they will definitely wander towards the street. So there was a lot of concerns around the fields just being right out in the open there with Westwood and Foxwood Street. So I just wanted to put that in.
I have the same concern.
So what do they say?
For the north, I think is what you're saying. Prefer the north. I think
we lost her.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, please. Yep. Tonight was just discussion.
Yeah, no, this has been great. So we have a sustainability subcommittee or working group meeting on Wednesday morning. For anyone that can join us, that would be wonderful. We just wanted to give you an update now and a preview or precursor to what we've been working on and we'll be presenting on Wednesdays. So we have conducted a life cycle cost analysis. We have looked at all of these systems, starting with a base gas boiler with a VAV system, a variable air volume system. So we've tried to include as many non-acronyms or explanations of acronyms. So Rachel, just let us know if we're doing engineering speak here. But so we looked at a gas boiler for a base comparison, and then we looked at a VRF system, variable refrigerant flow system, which is it's a type of air source system. We then looked at an air source heat pump system with a fan coil unit, and then ground source heat pump system, which is the plant with the distribution of a chill beam, fan coil unit, displacement ventilation, and a VRF system. So we had our sustainability consultants run the analysis, and if you go to the next slide, what this will do, and what this shows you, the report will be forthcoming, but the results of the report will tell you, the first column is what your energy use index is, or intensity is. And this is really important because this is really what we want to focus on as we think about how can we make this building net zero. Our goal, or net zero ready, right? Our goal is to always have it be 25 or less, and with Mass Save, they're saying anything under 25.5 or 25.4 would qualify for a net zero ready or to take advantage of their program. So the EUI is the first column, and then we've had our cost estimates completed, so we know what the first cost is. The first cost is your construction cost, right? What it costs to actually construct these systems. We then have added in what the Mass Save incentives are for each of the systems. We can go into the next slide in a minute, but suffice to say that everyone is really excited about the opportunities of utilizing ground source heat pumps. And so Mass Save has very large, as you'll see, $1.3 million in incentives if we utilize ground source heat pumps and have our EUI under 25. So that's a really nice rebate that you would receive. There's some post-occupancy incentives of about $130,000. And then what we've learned, and I think we've shared, is that the Inflation Reduction Act, not the IRA, not what you contribute to for your retirement savings, but Inflation Reduction Act tax credits, is that now they are allowing direct pay for municipalities that do not participate or do not pay taxes. It used to be a credit against your taxes. Because you don't pay taxes, they're actually going to cut you a check. It's huge. And where this is what we understand of the program, so you can see it would actually be approximately 30%. There's adders, you can maybe go up, but so if I say just for simplicity, it's the cost of the system, including some of the feeders, some of the electricity, and now people are even saying you might even get paid for the space that it's in. So we're all learning as we're going, but you can see it's approximately a $4 million rebate that they would cut a check to the town after construction is complete. And then what we did is we took the annual operating cost. The annual operating cost is the cost of the obviously operating the building, and you can see in every option, it's pretty straightforward and consistent among all of the options. And then what you'll see, we did not show the replacement costs, right? Net present day value. I know we didn't show the chart. We didn't include the chart because we knew we were going to be tired at this point. So we'll share that. I think we've shared that. But there's a replacement cost. So just to say a VRF system, you're going to start replacing parts at 15 years, right? And then with a ground source heat pump system, you aren't really the ground source heat pump system itself, the plant, there really is very little moving parts. You don't have to worry about that. But the replacement cost would be as part of the distribution system, which is your fan coil or your chill beam system or displacement. And we have those charts to demonstrate how many times and how much of the replacement would be required over a 50-year lifespan. So when we do that, you can see that they're all relatively close. The VRF system actually has the shortest lifespan, and so you'd almost be replacing that twice compared to some of the other ones over a 50-year life cycle. So when you add all of that up with the gas boiler utilizing a VAV system as your base system, a VRF system would actually cost about $1.3 million more. You do not get the IRA credits. Everyone is focused on the ground source heat pumps right now as an alternative to reduce your energy use or electricity needs. And then you'll see as you go, an air source saves about $1 million, and then your ground source, which used to cost not this much more, but used to cost about $2 million more, $3 million more, it's a savings to the community. So this is just wonderful news for everyone that's really trying to do the right thing and was always having to make some very difficult decisions based on cost. And this not only eliminates that, but it actually can help support doing a ground source heat pump or an all-electric building. I think I'll just stop there if anyone has any questions. And it's a lot. And so we actually have we've submitted or posted the sustainability presentation as well, which would have more information. We can get back to it. I know everyone's so tired.
Join Wednesday if you want to hear.
Join Wednesday.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
The agenda's posted with the link for anyone that wants to join.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you for at least putting this out as an initial, now that we have some of the life cycle costs. It's been it's very helpful, and I went through it twice already, and I need to read it more before I get all of it, but thank you.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just wonderful, exciting news. So we'll just keep going. The next slide is just, oh, thank you.
Jeremy?
Yeah, just one question. So is the IRA tax refunds, is it a 5-year period of pulling this money from when it was originally allocated as the Inflation Relief Act? Or is what's the lifespan on that money? And will we see it by the time we're done doing construction, just so we don't, account for money that may not be there when we're done?
Yeah, that's, so it was partially garbled. I think what you asked, Jeremy, was what's the lifespan or how long is the IRA tax credits going to remain, right?
Understand. Yeah, it's our understanding. Everyone is projecting that those are here to stay. So I don't know if someone will come back and remove that from law, but right.
That's my question. I just wanted
Yeah.
to know what your kind of level of was with it. That's all.
Yeah, everyone is.
This is somewhat new to us, but there are many tax attorneys and tax accountants and people that are really focused and have really dived deep into this. And everyone, from what we're hearing, is saying that these tax credits should be here to stay. We've shown this before, and we'll just, this really just shows you, we know, based on the energy use of the building, the schedules that we've received, that we can hit the Path 1, Tier 1 for EUI, which is just wonderful. So you can take advantage, whether it's the VRF system at $1,200 a ton rebate or ground source heat pump at $4,500 a ton, which was reflected in the slide before. So we're really happy to report, and I think everyone, I don't know if everyone took a peek and went straight to the bottom, but the costs really came in favorable, and we're really pleased with it. The PDP was really just very preliminary design, and it was reflected on, you know, cost per square foot. We didn't have a lot of information, and so once we narrowed it down and we were able to really hone in on option 3, this really allowed us to focus, understand the site constraints, understand what was required of the building, or what was required to achieve effectively all of the options that we're preparing, that we've presented to you tonight. So this is still preliminary, and so much more work needs to go into it, but we're feeling really good about the results of the cost estimate. We had 2 cost estimators, 2 independent third-party cost estimators, one from Danisco, one from Durham Whittier. They were less than 0.5% apart. I mean, it was really, you know, great, and they both get the scope. So we're really happy with the results. So, yep, that would be great. You're gonna.
Yeah, I can walk through this.
Thank you.
So this first slide, this kind of takes a look at the construction costs, and as you can see, it starts with 3A and 3B on the left. Those are both 3-story models, and then 3C and 3D, which are 2-story models. We're going to talk a little bit more about the contracting method, whether it's design, bid, build, or CM at risk in a moment. But as you can see, well, let me list what's on the left side of the page first. So total construction baseline, which is a VAV, gas-fired boiler. The next is the adder that Donna just went through to switch to a ground source heat pump and fan coil units. Then that gets you to the total construction cost, and I'm looking at option 3A in the CMR column just as an example. That gets you to around 83 million, and then when you take out those incentives and rebates, that's the 5.4, which gets you to the bottom line construction cost. So I'm just going to pause right there and see if anybody has any questions on this particular sheet.
Yeah, so when you, in the second white row, you added for the ground source heat pumps and FCU, was that because FCU is kind of in the middle and so you were using it as a median, and that's just to give us an idea? Is that why we don't have, I'm glad we don't have a list of every single option. So is that what your thinking was?
Correct.
Great.
Well,
Thank you.
and I would just like to add also, we've had some great conversations with the school department about options and which type of distribution system did they feel comfortable with as
good.
well.
So as you can see, since we're going to talk about CM at risk and design, bid, build, if you take a look at any of the options, there is a premium for CM at risk, and it looks like it's in the $4 to $6 million range, depending on which option you look at. So that's just something to keep in mind as we continue the conversation. I'm going to switch to the next slide.
Before you go on.
Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to raise, one of the things that's not represented here is the potential to use, for the project to include the PV electric generation. And so if people get attached to these numbers, there may still be some value add that we might want, that comes in later in the project.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah, there's still several decisions left to be made that could impact these numbers, so it was important for people to know that this is sort of a snapshot in time of what was on the drawings that our estimators looked at.
I would like to add, though, Roger, that the infrastructure for PV is included. So although the PV is not included, the actual photovoltaics, the canopies, on the roof, those aren't included. So if you do a PPA, the building will be designed so that it's just, you know, you just plug it in. And I don't know, do we have conduit in the parking lot to support for electric vehicle? But, you know, we can add that as well. But we typically will do that.
Okay, this next slide looks at sort of overall project costs. So similar to what you just saw on the previous slide, starting with the left-hand column, working my way down, just looking at the 3A CMR option as an example. We have the total construction with ground source heat pump and fan coil units, which we saw on the previous page. Then we've put in a multiplier for soft costs, and some of those soft costs are listed down at the bottom of the page, bulleted items, essentially the project team and anything that isn't in the building, which gets you to the subtotal of project costs, where in this example is the 104.941. Then there's the same reduction for the incentives and rebates to get you a total project cost. And so what's not on this sheet, and we plan on getting this out probably tomorrow. We were hoping to have it for tonight. Steve had some medical issues. So we have run 3011s, which are the total project budget sheets that the MSBA uses. And so we ran them so far off of the CM at risk numbers. And right now we're projecting the district share is in the $65 million range, where I think at PDP we were closer to 80. And so that should be good news. We think a large part of it has to do with these additional caps, the cap increases that the MSBA has provided, so it's excellent news. As Donna said, the costs at PDP are more of a cost per square foot, and now that we've had designers actually get eyes on something to look at rather than a box, so we're getting much more closer and refined on the numbers. So, you know, we think that's good news. We'd like to offer we're going to send that out to Ways and Means. If you guys would like to take a look at numbers and think about tax impacts, that would be greatly appreciated. Happy to attend a meeting if you'd like. But it's all good news. And so we're glad it's going in this direction. And so let me pause there and see if there's any questions.
I have one. What was the increase that SBA agreed to?
Yeah, the construction cap for the building used to be $393 per square foot. It's now $550 per square foot. And respectively, site work also increased from $39 per square feet to $55 per square feet. So you're getting more money from the state, and you know, that coupled with some of these incentives and rebates, which I think you all know is just recently now allowed by MSBA, where they used to kind of say, if you get extra money, we're going to take it off our grant. So that policy is now gone. So two very good things for this particular project.
That's great.
Yeah, so as I said, we'll make that available. We can send it out to the committee just showing the district share, and then you can also have access to the 3011 budget sheet, and feel free to take a look and let us know if you have any questions. Yeah, okay. So we're getting a little long here. We did have a presentation. Hopefully some of you have had a chance to take a look at it. I'm just going to hit it quickly, but before I get into it, I do want to share with you that Danisco and Doran Whittier got together. If you go to the next slide, this talks about some kind of considerations that are important that we think about as it relates to making this choice. For some districts, budget is obviously a top concern. If every penny counts, people understand that CM at risk comes with a premium, and as you saw on that previous slide, it's in the $4 to $5-ish million range, and so that's one major consideration. Sort of the design itself, is it complex? You know, the schedule, do we need to utilize early release packages based on the time of year that our drawings get done? you know, a risk assessment. If it's like, you know, if it's a phased occupied renovation, that level of complexity sort of lends itself more to CM at risk than design bid build. And then owner's expertise, what's the town used to? I believe that you've done both methods in this town, so I don't know that there's a preference or ease, but those are some of the things that we think about as it relates to the project and sort of being able to make a recommendation to the committee on which way to go. I'm going to sum it up pretty quickly, and then I can flip through the slides if you like. As a team, we kind of got together and challenged ourselves to come up with a $4 to $5 million reason why it would make sense to go CM at risk, and we can't. The site is fairly big compared to some of the other ones we've seen, and so, you know, I think design bid build will be fine. The schedule, there's no pro in terms of being able to issue an early release package just because of the time of year that our drawings are finishing, so we don't see that as an advantage. And those are the two main reasons. We just don't, we don't think we would recommend that, so ultimately we're going to recommend that we go design bid build, save the money. Click down.
There's a bunch of slides that we provided that just provide facts and advantages.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave this one up on the screen for a moment and just kind of see if anybody has any questions. In general, I think the big picture difference is with design bid build, you go 100% through design and then you bid it. With CM at risk, you get to about 50%, which is our schematic design. They come on board. They would come on board basically in this phase, and the thought behind that is you're going to have to pay them money. We usually specify an amount for the CMs, and we haven't had anybody push back on that, anywhere in the $30,000 to $50,000 range. They come on board. They do kind of constructability reviews. They're looking at the drawings as they progress. They provide, instead of the OPM, they will provide a schematic design estimate. They will also weigh in on phasing and logistics. And so that's kind of big picture, the difference between the two. And again, you know, we just don't see the need for it here.
Mike, my question, my understanding of it is, and it says right here, the CM would assume the risk for project cost. Now, in this kind of still slightly unprecedented area, do we see that as an advantage, or is it moving? I mean, this is expensive. I didn't really know.
Yeah, no. So when you have a CM, we typically build a guaranteed maximum price, which is a GMP, right? And so what is in a GMP are the designer has, you know, issued some documents. The CM has been looking at them. They've been attending meetings with us, and they've been going through this level of coordination. They kind of know that, you know, I don't think they drew this retaining wall quite right. I'm going to have a hold for $100,000 in addition to that. So that they're identifying risks, plugging money into the GMP, and so you're going to pay for it either way. You know, I will say that typically Danisco's drawings are pretty tight, and in terms of change orders, you know, it's very low in the percents. You know, I would expect it to be in the 1% to 2% range at the worst. And so, you know, knowing that you have a good designer, knowing that you have a good team looking at it and thinking about these phasing and logistics now, again, we're struggling to figure out why we would spend $5 million more. It ranges 4, 5, and 6, yeah. So it's not insignificant money. Again, if we thought, personally, most of the jobs that I do are CM at risk, but they're also pretty complex jobs. Not that this isn't. I'm not diminishing that this is a complex project, but just we don't see the need. So I can answer any more questions. I don't know that we need a vote or anything like that, right? I mean, it can be all part of, you know, the next meeting and discussion. So I'll let you think about it, look at those slides, and certainly be prepared to come back and talk about it next time.
Can you just fast forward 2 slides? I think, is this a typo just for my clarification? You have 2 advantages. I think this is disadvantages.
She wants disadvantages.
It sounds like the one that says 2 advantages, they're both advantages? Okay. It just says takes time, may mean longer, additional costs, so they sounded like disadvantages to me.
Yeah, there's supposed to be one for advantages and one for disadvantages.
Okay, yeah, I think the second one is disadvantage.
Yes.
Just if we're going home and reading, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. All right, thank you. I don't have any other topics. I don't have anyone left in the room, so is there anyone online? Those little bubbles are confusing. So no hands. All right. Next meetings next week, right? 1 week.
Monday night?
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to clarify this evening is which date do we prefer for the next community meeting, either December 4th or 5th. It's important for us to schedule that as soon as possible so that way we can start the distribution for the community meeting to the public and to the community. So if people want to recommend a date, that would be great.
Flip a coin.
I just want it to be virtual.
I have a slight preference for Tuesday, but you guys, you know, it's either way. The 5th?
And I think I think the question was if it's hybrid, all virtual. I think we checked the auditorium and the high school is available if we want to do a hybrid or in person, but it's a busy time of year.
Does anyone have a preference
be
for
cold.
virtual, I mean, for in person? Yes? No. Oh, okay. For virtual, I'd support that. Okay. That's why I'm asking.
The whole
Yeah.
thing virtual?
Yes.
Doesn't matter to me,
Like
but
we
there
did the
might be
2 of them.
members of the public. I know, like Pat Angelo was really upset when we had the virtual one before because she doesn't have a computer, she doesn't do that
I spoke to Marge at the senior center and offered like a room to view at the senior center. And she said she asked and everyone preferred to be at home. But I can offer to Marge again and I can talk to Pat.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
gonna do it. I think there are some people that are gonna be angry with us for not having in person, but virtual works for me.
No, we're
Okay.
planning on, we're going to be here either way, so if it's.
In this room?
Well, no, I meant we're going to be present, giving the presentation. We're fine if you all would like to do
I like the
a
format that
hybrid.
we did in the summer, if that works. And
I-
I'll talk to Marge and I'll gladly talk to Pat.
I really appreciate that. I think it's important to offer it. And I don't know if people are just more, what time is this meeting?
So
Our last meeting that we had that was hybrid was at 7 o'clock.
And then the
So-
in-person one was 7 o'clock
Is,
also.
That's the
this-
hybrid one, yeah.
So is the senior
That's the
center
one that I
open?
meant, yeah, because it technically was hybrid as well, even though it was in person, was being filmed.
Yes,
And in
Bob?
that way, then people could participate that way as well.
So is the senior center open at 7 o'clock? Is that an option? And if not, could we ask the library? I think they're open till 9.
I'm happy to talk to Marge
Okay.
regardless, see
Great.
how we can make it work.
Thank you.
Yep. Bob had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that in the last community meeting, being in the auditorium,
Yeah.
the logistical nightmares of trying to hybrid stream at the same time. We didn't necessarily get the greatest feedback on that, so something to consider.
And also, just, we'd like to get that figured out, just so that way, for the distribution purposes of the flyer and postcards, have the correct information on it. And, you know, with the Thanksgiving holiday, I want to make sure we get this out as soon as possible.
I think the virtual one was fine.
how many more are there? I think we're really setting ourselves up to get criticized for not having some in-person meetings.
I think, sorry. I think we need to have as many as that you feel that we need to have. I want to make sure we're being as transparent as possible with the community. I think that a lot of people feel that they want to give their input, and doing it in person is helpful for them versus hybrid or only virtual. It's completely up to each community itself, but we're happy to schedule them as necessary as possible. I mean, I think that obviously through the MSBA process, we do have to provide at each submission a local actions and approvals letter that outlines as many community meetings that we've had for public participation purposes, and that's very important to be displaying that information to the MSBA as well.
There were a lot of people at that last one because they really cared about the size of the school. So is there a hot topic on this one, or is it general?
You know, I think once we click submit on the preferred schematic report, we're kind of locked and loaded in terms of we've figured out where the building's going to be, stories, a lot of the hot button sort of controversial issues. And so after you make that choice, schematic design is about doing all these enhancements that we talked about tonight. Where are the fields? What are the fields? Do we want fields? Like all those things are what's going to happen. So I would think that at a minimum, we should probably count on 2, possibly 3, but at least 2 in schematic design, and it would probably be a couple of months from now. Call it February would probably make sense. And Donna, correct me if you don't agree, but I would think probably February, and then about a month before we submit SD, so call it springtime. I think that would be appropriate, and then if you guys feel the need to do more, just let us know.
Yeah, but I think to respond to your question, Chris, this is probably the last presentation or community input before a final decision is made. I think we've all heard 2-story, so then it would be a matter of
Final decision on what?
on which location.
The location
The
vote is supposed
location.
to be next week, right?
Yeah.
So
The location and vote, yeah. So this will be
This is just an
only-
informational meeting,
it'll
is
be
my
the
understanding.
presentation
Yeah.
of showing what your final costs are.
Yeah.
Right, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
that's okay. But
Yeah.
I don't think on December 5th that we're going to get, you can see all the lovely folks here tonight. I don't know if for this time of year, for this particular presentation, if it's worth a hybrid meeting.
I was even going to suggest we could do it at the senior center, but you're saying you're having BCAT issues with the
people aren't going to
coordination.
go.
Okay.
No, I think it's, sorry, through the chair, it's definitely more reliable in a small situation. You know, I think we get into sound issues more in the auditorium just because it's so large, and then trying to integrate with the mic system that's there. But if it's an independent, either like this room or a smaller room like 123 or even at the senior center, so I think we would be more comfortable in that environment. Yeah, but we could bring everything, right?
Why not this room?
Yeah.
We could.
There's a small number of people who might want to show up in person, and we could just conduct it.
Yeah, but
This room would be
isn't the
better.
weekly meeting
Sure.
the public meeting?
Is this room open, Eric?
Not really. It's a little warm.
I know.
If we designated a public meeting, the people have to.
Well, I think we did have probably 80, maybe 100 in person, so I agree with Chris that we may be setting ourselves up for looking like we're changing our tact. We did it in person here at the high school, and it was hybrid, and notwithstanding the technology issues, I just, I don't know how people will view it. And then if you do it in this room, what do we do if 80 people show up?
They won't.
That's my point. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there was there was a issue on the table at that point. This is just purely a presentation,
Okay.
and we offer public comment every single week. There's public comment next week before we make a vote. I think if anyone's going to come, I would hope they would come at that time. My understanding of the 5th meeting was more of a here's where we are presentation, which feels much more of a sit at home or watch it the next day even. I think that's what my understanding what a lot of people do for these meetings. Yes.
What are the votes for next Monday?
The 3C, A, B. B, D.
Post that we were gonna make them next Monday, not tonight?
Yes.
So we're gonna do 2-story or 3-story next Monday, and orientation next Monday. So those will be decided prior to the public meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we want to hint that people are gonna weigh in if we've already made that decision. We just need to communicate that decision once we make it next week. Again, I'm agreeing with you, this is really informational. Here's our 2-story North-oriented school.
And here's the cost.
Yep.
Right.
it's a lot better than it was what we
originally
presented at DBT.
Right. And then maybe cost to the taxpayers if we have that opportunity by then.
I
But
think
it-
that's a meeting beyond the 5th. Because I think we need to put a lot of, tell a story, I think is what
Yeah.
we have to do. Right.
Great. So we're
Martha,
happy,
okay.
if you feel that, I mean, it could just be us in this room and, you know, the whole committee doesn't need to be here, right? But giving people an opportunity to be here in person, we're happy to.
Move we adjourn?
I'm,
Go ahead, Martha.
I just think that given that people talk about not being able to access, that if we can do a hybrid meeting here in this room, if that seems feasible, I don't think we're going to get the numbers we got for the last community meeting, and people can still watch it online. I think that's my preference.
Then can I reiterate, can I change my preference to the 4th? Yeah.
What if I get you a babysitter?
You have to have a hockey driver.
Hockey driver, I think I
Um,
could.
I can do the 5th, that's fine.
Okay, so we will schedule it for the 5th, and it will be a hybrid meeting in this room at 7 o'clock. Perfect.
Now can I move we adjourn?
Chris, there you go, agenda topic.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.